Welcome to the Wandering Pilgrims podcast. Thanks for joining us again on our 9th installment of the Pilgrims Progress series. It's starting to be like the song that never ends. Or at least that's how it feels. Every time we start on this and start getting prepped for an episode, I'm like, oh, we've got one more episode. Yeah, it never ends up being just one more episode. So just a little background. This series that we're covering is on the book The Pilgrims Progress by John Bunyan, written in the 1600s by a illegal preacher who was currently being jailed for being an illegal preacher. And it is the second most sold book outside the Bible. It's been translated into, I can't even remember how many languages, and it's so important. This should give you an idea of how important this book can be for the Christian faith. It was banned in communist China along with the Bible. So it was being snuck into the country with the Bible.
I didn't know that.
Yes. I learn new things every once in a while. But yeah, it was viewed as that important. So that tells me that it has to be pretty important. Recap. Spoiler alert. I don't remember if I said that in the last one. So I'm going to do it again. I am getting better about it, though. What did we talk about last episode? Oh, is that bad that I completely forgot? We talked about the shepherds. That's it. We talked about the shepherds. They made it to the Delectable Mountains, Christian and hopeful on their journey. And they talked about all of the things that they saw there. And all the things the shepherds showed them, which scared them pretty well. I think that's a pretty decent, because I don't want to give too much, because we'll be talking about last episode for 30 minutes if we if we go down that path. So definitely go check out those other episodes if you're interested in where we're at. We highly recommend that you check out links in the descriptions. And if you haven't read it, go ahead and read it before you listen to any more, or at least read along with the podcast, so you have a good idea of what's going on and you can take from it what you take from it and see how it lines up with us. And we are definitely probably not even cliff notes for this book.
Yeah.
And the amount you can get out of it and how important it is to your faith and growing. But I think that pretty much gets us back to where we are now. So, are you ready to dive in?
Oh, yeah.
This episode of the Wandering Pilgrims podcast is sponsored by Anchor, the easiest and fastest way to record, edit, and distribute your podcast. We love Anchor and the Anchor app. We've used it from the very beginning. It's so user-friendly, whether you're a beginner or a veteran. It's free to use with tons of editing tools and free music to use, just to name a few things. They also take care of distributing your podcast to all major podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, and so many more. So if you're looking to get into podcasting but don't know where to start, download the Anchor app or visit anchor.fm to get started today. Okay, so Christian and hopeful were leaving out from the Delectable Mountains and the shepherds, and they just warned them about different things and what to look out for and helpful tidbits along the way, right?
Yep.
Okay. So they're walking along straight and narrow path. And they come up to this point where there's this little crooked lane that comes and meets the straight and narrow path.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a man coming down the crooked lane.
Mm-hmm.
From the country of conceit.
Yes.
And this man's name is Ignorance. Now, we're at the part of this book where it, for me, like, ignorance is an important topic.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's choppy to me.
Yeah.
Because basically what happens is he's around for a little bit, and then he kind of vanishes for a little bit, and then he pops back up again, and then, like, he's in and out for this last stage of their journey.
Yeah.
And maybe that's on purpose.
Yeah, well, he stays with them, but he's kind of walking behind them.
Yeah.
And he's walking behind them for most of the rest of the way.
Okay, but they only kind of bring him into the story every so often.
Yeah.
Well, now that I think about it, because going through it seems choppy to me, because you're only getting part of this person at a time, whereas most of the others, you have a start and a finish.
Yeah, it's like a singular interaction.
But maybe ignorance is this way for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because we will always be ignorant to some degree.
Yeah.
So maybe it's in the book that way, because every so often ignorance will rear its head in each person's life about something.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So don't be conceited in your knowledge. Maybe that's why. Okay. Didn't think about that till now. But okay. I will concede the choppiness that it has a purpose. Had not thought about that before. So I'm trying to think, how did, like, they meet on the road, and like, how did it even get started? Because they were kind of like, how did you get here? They always question people they meet.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Christian and Hopeful were just kind of like, how did you get to this point in your journey? And he's like, oh, I just came down that lane from my country.
Yeah.
And Christian was kind of like, did you go by the wicket gate?
Yeah, he's like, no.
Why would I do that?
No.
It takes me all the way back. Why would I do that when my lane just runs right into the path?
Yeah, I can start here.
Yeah, why can't I start here? I'm a good, because he makes a point of saying, I'm a good man.
Mm-hmm.
I pay my taxes. I pay people that I owe.
Yeah.
I do what I'm supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I'm good enough to be in this way, and I'm good enough to be let in.
Yeah.
As I am.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I can go in the way at this point. And Hopeful and Christian are kind of on the fence about what to do about him.
Yeah. Well, Christian's idea is that you have to start at the wicket gate.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much closer or how much further away you are.
Yeah.
You have to start at this singular point.
Yeah. Well, certain things
and then
in
walk
life.
the full path.
Certain things in life are like that.
Yeah.
You have to learn addition before you can ever hope to do calculus.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to have a starting point. Yeah.
And there's certain steps to a lot of things in life, and we try to jump the gun a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And that just gets us in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, especially when you're talking a faith and religious basis.
Yeah.
If you, I guess we'll say, jump the gun, and you get in over your head, and you start learning these phrases, and if you didn't work up to it, you may not know what they mean, and you may not be helping people that aren't as far along on their journey. They may think you are, and you're not. So you're blind leading the blind situation.
Yeah. Or
you get caught up by somebody that does know what they're talking about and can point out your ignorance.
Yeah.
So while they were talking, Christian and Hopeful kind of, like, off to the side were like, what do we do with this person?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do we leave him? do we take him with us? Well, like, what do we do? And they kind of had a little bit of dialogue. They kind of tried to straighten his thought.
Yeah, they try to straighten his thought process. They, they're, basically, like, you have to come in at this point.
Yeah.
You have to start at the wicket gate. Like, there's a point in which, like, acceptance and, like, you're deciding, so I accept.
You have to come by way of Christ and the cross.
Yes. Yeah.
You can't skip that part.
No. I'm deciding that I'm going to go down this journey, no matter what it takes. And the wicket gate is the starting point for that.
Yeah.
And everyone for 1,000 years from conceit has never gone by way of the wicket gate.
Yeah, he makes a point of that. He's like, nobody has ever
like, no one
done
has
that.
Ever done
this
that.
Is what we always do.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you've always done it doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're talking back and forth about this, and it gets to the point where ignorance just kind of looks at him and goes, keep to your religion from your country, and I'll keep to mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I took something from that, but, and I have no idea. It may not be true. It may just be that I was tired when I was listening to it. But when he made that remark, and then I started thinking over what ignorance had said, like he's taking shortcuts, he's doing the works he's supposed to be doing, he's obeying the laws that he's supposed to obey, kind of thing. And knowing the era and circumstances John Bunyan comes from, as soon as he said that to Christian, it immediately clicked for me. There's a correlation with a Catholic at this point.
Could be.
Because the Protestant Reformation and everybody would consider them ignorant.
Yeah.
And that they bypassed Christ by confessing to a priest instead of going to Christ themselves, and then the works, of course, and that you can do these certain things or these certain rituals to be forgiven, or those kinds of things. So that was just kind of where it went for me. Whether or not that's true and what he had in mind, I have no idea. But
at the time is that at the time that he's writing this book, a majority of them would have been ignorant.
Well,
of what it actually said.
If you're Catholic at that time and everything's in Latin, how would you not be ignorant? Yeah. You can't read it. Yeah. Or understand it unless you're one of the more educated people, which was one of the main points in the Reformation.
Yeah. I mean, you're not a bad person, but you're a follower of
bad doctrine. Or is it really even?
No, but very easily manipulated.
It's easy to do when you don't give people all of the pieces to the puzzle. So, I mean, that's just kind of what I got out of it, especially considering the other references to the Pope and Catholicism and things in the book. Yeah. That, I mean, ignorance applies to way more than just that. But that particular point, like you keep to your country religion, and I'll keep to my country's religion, that was like the defining line of, because England was Protestant. And, so many other countries were Catholic still. Yeah. So that just kind of was where it went. And what was the saying, though? Wise in his own conceit. That was along the lines, I think, of what they said. Yeah. And a fool will prove himself a fool.
Yeah, basically, like when you start talking about anything, really. Yeah. When you pretend that you know what you're talking about, inevitably in the conversation, you will prove yourself a fool.
I agree with that. The problem with that statement now is that most people don't listen to what other people are saying. To listen to what they're saying. Yeah. that they hear what they're saying, but it's only to respond.
Yeah.
And make themselves a lot of times sound at least on par, if not smarter or more educated in an area than that person. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're sitting and you're listening to a person and really thinking about how they're talking and what they're saying, and even how they're acting while they're talking, you can pick up on, wow, you really don't know what you're talking about, do you?
Yeah.
A whole lot quicker if you just take a breath instead of just listening to respond. Really listen to what people have to say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean have a meaningful conversation?
Yes, a meaningful conversation. But, I mean, Christian and Hopeful did kind of want to help him. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, he just kind of trails behind at this point in the story. So that was kind of where they left it with him. He's there, but he's not actively participating in what's going on with Christian and Hopeful.
Yeah.
I'd say he's a good, several yards behind him. Mm-hmm. Behind them, I'd say. So they move on. And they get to this part, and I'm going to be honest. This is the part in the story that I think they take a bigger leap down a rabbit hole than we've taken during all of our discussions.
Yeah, this bit of dialogue.
Because I have the hardest time following it and why it really relates and why it's here. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter. Like, I see that it's important, but I don't see how it correlates, really. So basically what happens is there's this dark lane, and there's a man. And this man is bound by 7 cords, and 7 devils are taking him back to the door in the hill, which was the byway to hell. Mm-hmm. So they're pulling this man. And Christian thinks about it, and he thinks the man's name was it Turnaway? Turnabout? Okay. And who lived in apostasy. Mm-hmm. So he was a Christian, and now I don't think I am. Yeah. So he couldn't make up his mind, and he kept turning around. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of that lately.
Yes.
Of mainstream people. And this man's being led by 7 cords, by 7 devils back to the byway to hell. Mm-hmm. That's a very vivid picture for what we've had going on in the Christian community, world community. That's pretty stark. Yeah. And sobering. So the turnabout had a paper on his back. Mm-hmm. And it said, wanton professor, not wanting, wanton professor, and damnable apostate. Yeah. So, that's, it's kind of self-explanatory. Like, you don't need a whole lot to go there.
Yes, it's pretty direct.
You were judged and found wanting at this point because of how you have acted. You said you were for me, and then you turned your back on me. Mm-hmm. So you have this image and everything going through this book at this point, right? And you're expecting, or at least I was, considering how this whole book is, that there's going to be some dialogue about apostasy or about the man or something, right? And all you get is that they saw him.
Yeah, they just see him.
And then they go down a rabbit hole because something about that reminded Christian of a story.
Yeah, it reminds him of a story that he heard about a man named Little Faith.
I mean, people of little faith, I guess you could contend, relate to apostasy because you can't have great faith and then decide one day you don't believe.
Yeah, it doesn't usually happen.
I mean, but so Christian had heard about this fella named Little Faith.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when the rabbit hole begins.
Yeah, it's a very large bit of dialogue. I mean, it, like a good 30 minutes worth of dialogue.
When I'm sitting there and I'm listening to it and I'm taking notes, getting prepared for our podcast, and I'm waiting with anticipation for it to relate back to it. And it never really circled back for me.
It does, but not in a very obvious way.
Okay. Well, it was late. I was looking for obvious.
The point is the story about Little Faith. And Turnabout he's kind of the lead into the story.
Okay.
So we see this man, right? And now I can tell you this story.
Okay.
Rather than him just bringing it up, it reminds him of the story.
I know, but I just... I don't know. The story of Little Faith was not as attention-grabbing as when you're saying there's a man being hauled off to the door in the hill.
That's exactly the point.
Okay.
So what that is the visualization of Turnabout being carried off is more appealing than... It's more... Attention grabbing.
Okay.
Than just, oh, hey, I heard the story about this guy named Little Faith.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to go, okay, here comes
more dialogue.
Truckload of dialogue.
Yeah.
Right? So, and for that reason, it's left out of a lot of different versions of this book. Like, modern versions and stuff, they don't have this bit of dialogue. But it is an important bit of dialogue.
Okay, well, you may have to hold my hand through it and help me through it a little bit.
But the Turnabout, the visual of Turnabout being carried off is an attention grabber. Mm-hmm. It's a literary mechanism to grab your attention, to say, hey, what we're fixing to discuss is very important.
Well, I'd also like to point out that they discussed, I don't want to jump too much, but they just discussed the door in the hill and the byway to hell, and that it found people at different points in their journey. Mm-hmm. They were hauling a man back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he made it that far. He made it further than Christian and Hopeful. Mm-hmm. And then they had him bound up. And he renounced what he believed, and they were carrying him to the fastest way to hell.
Yep.
That's terrifying. So on to Little Faith then. So he was supposed to, live in a town named Sincere?
Yeah. So just real quick, I get this visual of... have you ever seen the movie Ghost?
Oh.
With Demi Moore and...
I try not to.
So in the movie, spoilers, the bad guys in the movie, when they die, these shadow people, these shadow things, like they crawl out of the shadows and they grab the spirits of the bad guys and they drag them into the darkness.
See, you could have totally went with Princess and the Frog, and I would have been on board with that way easier than if you went with Ghost. I can't believe you've never seen Ghost. I have seen enough of Ghost to know I don't want to finish the movie.
But, yeah, so that's the visual that I get of that. I don't know what squeaked here, but...
I'm not going to let you wear shoes anymore.
That's kind of the idea that I'm getting out of that.
Okay. Yeah, you could have totally went with The Princess and the Frog. That is way more along the lines of what I get to watch on a regular basis at this point in my life. Although I have to say, pretty good movie.
Yeah, it is.
It's a cute little movie. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so Little Faith, who lived in the town of Sincere. Mm-hmm. And Christian had heard this. He didn't necessarily know him personally.
Yeah.
there was a gate. It was a wide gate, or is it a Broadway? I kept thinking Broadway show when I was listening to it.
It's Broadway.
Okay, so not straight and narrow.
No.
Well, it led into something that they referred to as Dead Man's Lane.
Yeah.
Because of all the people that got murdered there.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. And somehow this very smart man named Little Faith not only found himself in Dead Man's Lane, he fell asleep.
Yeah, he took a nap.
He sounds like a smart cookie from the beginning. So then we're told that there's 3 bad guys, as there always are.
Yes.
And they come from the Broadway gate. They're brothers. And their names are Faint Heart, Mistrust, and Guilt.
Yes.
So they find not so smart sleeping man, try to rob him. Well, I mean, come on. You're in a lane called that and you fall asleep.
Yeah.
And you, like, of course something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
So they stole his bag of silver again. Silver.
Yeah. Silver again.
It's always silver.
Yeah. And he yells, "Thieves!"
Yeah. Like, that's really going to help and do anything.
So they club him over the head.
Make him bleed, knock him down. But they ran off. Like, they didn't finish the job because they heard, or they thought they heard someone coming. And they were afraid of this person that they called Great Grace.
Yes.
And he was supposed to live in a place called, what was it, Good Confidence? And their fear of Great Grace ran them off.
Yeah.
And the potential of... He I don't know. We get into him a little more later about why they were afraid of him.
He's like a champion.
Okay.
Like, his thing is that he fights
for pilgrims.
Like, he fights on the side of good, and he's very good at it.
Yeah, he always seemed to be armed from what we will learn about him. Like, he always walked with his sword out and ready to do whatever he needed to, kind of deal. So, once they ran off and once Little Faith comes to, he's on his way. I mean, what else are you going to do at this point?
Yeah.
But they make a point, and this is where it starts to go off the rails for me. They make a point of saying that he still had like a little odd money, but that they missed his jewels. Yeah,
so they took all of his spending money.
Yeah.
But they did not take his jewels, and they don't take his certificate, little thing that he's supposed to present
when he gets there.
Of the Celestial City.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest. Even if you took it, I think they would know.
Yeah, probably.
That you don't match the description.
Yeah. I think the idea of the ticket is that it's not really a ticket. It's like a note.
Yeah. It's a passport.
Like, the idea of this note is the fact that you kept it.
Yeah, you kept your faith the entire journey.
Yeah. So they didn't take that. Thank goodness. And they didn't take his jewels. And then this is where it kind of gets...
weird.
It's a little hard to keep up with because the dialogue is Christian hopeful, Christian hopeful, Christian hopeful. It goes back. It's back and forth and back and forth.
Well, I still don't even understand
this. This is the end of him telling him the story, and the beginning of their discussion about it.
Oh.
Which is of equal importance.
Yeah.
Well, as the story.
So he kept all his jewels.
Yes.
He's lucky. And then they make the point, or Christian makes the point of saying he had to beg.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to be honest. I was in Hopeful's camp from the beginning because I'm like, he has all of those jewels.
Yeah, so am I.
Just like, why are you holding... Because I'm thinking monetary, material...
Yeah.
materialism and like you can't take it to heaven and these kinds of things. Like why not just sell it and help you get on your way and get to the end of your journey?
Yeah.
So it kind of is like he wouldn't or couldn't sell the jewels at points. He didn't want to part with them.
So the significance of this is it's one of the first times that you see the two of them disagree.
Yeah.
And Christian is like they disagree about it, and Christian is like, oh well, let's leave it at that. And Hopeful is like, no,
I want an answer.
Like, we're gonna figure this thing out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has the jewels, and he doesn't want to sell the jewels. He would rather beg and make his way by begging than he would sell these jewels. And Christian's point is that no one wants to buy the jewels in the first place.
There's no one there to buy them.
There's no one there to buy them. And he doesn't want to sell them. So he might as well hang on to them. Right? Which makes sense.
Yeah, but on the other hand, anywhere you'd need to buy food, I'm pretty sure that they would be more than willing to take a jewel.
Yeah. Because they're worth more than the silver that he had in the first place.
Yeah, he'd be overpaying for what he needed.
Christian's point is that this is this man's inheritance, and it is not good of him to just willy-nilly give it away.
Like Esau.
Like exactly like Esau. This is who they begin to talk about.
Yeah.
And Hopeful's point is, yes, but Esau didn't even care about his inheritance.
Yeah.
Which is why it was so easy for him to give it away for a bowl of soup.
The same thing with the prodigal son.
Yeah.
He wanted his inheritance then and went and partied it up and then ended up begging and eating with the pigs and going back home. And the father was more than happy to welcome him back home. And Esau didn't get the first blessing, but he still was blessed.
Yeah, I mean, he becomes the father of the Edomites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by no means were they cursed because they lacked the blessings. So, I mean, like, at some points it seems like Little Faith was afraid to sell them because he'd lost all his money. So, it sounded stingy to me. And I'm like, but if you have, like, are you supposed to spend all of your savings? Are you supposed to hold on to stuff? Like, what is the point of this?
So I think the point is, the disagreement is whether or not should you carry your inheritance up to the point at which it does you no good anymore because it's not worth anything in heaven.
And what inheritance are we talking about? See, that's my question.
Let's say his jewels.
Are we talking about physical earthly inheritance?
Physical earthly inheritance. Physical earthly inheritance.
Okay.
Right?
That helps narrow it down.
Is it better for you to hold on to that? Right? All the way up to the point of now you have to let it go because you can't take it with you. But you're holding on to your inheritance. You're not frivolously giving it away or blowing it.
Yeah.
Or is it better of you to use that inheritance in whatever manner you need to get yourself further on that journey? I think this is at least part of the disagreement. Hopeful's idea is that you should use every means that you have at your disposal to further yourself on that journey. And that even though Little Faith has little faith, it's still faith.
Yeah.
It's still faith. Esau didn't have any. It doesn't say that he had any.
No.
It doesn't even say that he cared about having any. So Little Faith is starting ahead there anyway.
Well,
so why not use his inheritance? Why not use the jewels to further himself on his journey?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Christian made the point of saying that many will do what Esau did, basically.
Yeah.
But that it excludes them from their chief blessing. Like, what is that? Mm-hmm. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
So he's comparing it to Esau. So Esau didn't just give up an earthly inheritance, the cows, the farms, the being head of household, all of that.
He gave up the spiritual blessing that went along with it.
Yeah, he literally also gave up a direct blessing from God, which he would have had. Yeah, because he didn't take it seriously.
Which is why he said it was no big deal for a man of no faith to sell it off.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's one tiny little nugget cleared up. But I just don't get it. I guess that's my biggest thing. Like, I do believe that I remember reading somewhere, and it has been a long time, so I could be absolutely wrong. And I don't have anything in front of me to reference to look this up, but I do seem to remember something about, and it may have been a proverb, you have done a good job if you leave something for your children and your children's children.
Yeah.
So that may be kind of along these lines too. But the other thing that I think of when we're talking about this, which, by the way, it still makes no sense. I don't understand why it's here.
It's just a bit of dialogue. It's just them arguing about not discussing something. Yeah.
How people discuss and are supposed to discuss differences in faith and religion.
Yeah, because Christian is like, well, it's fine. We'll just agree to disagree and we'll go on our way. And hopeful is like, no, this is actually important. Like, we need to flesh this out.
Yeah.
So we have all of this time to walk and talk. So we're going to do it. Yeah. And they disagree, but they're not disagreeable.
Yeah. And I don't know that they really ever land on an answer.
They do. They kind of, I'm fairly certain, they kind of meet in the middle.
Okay.
A little bit. So, of course, if you have a family, you want to leave something for your family.
Yeah.
But you definitely don't want to hold on to something and be covetous of something that is of material wealth.
That can do you no good where you're going.
Yeah, that could do you a lot of good.
Here, to get you
on
there.
Your way to get there.
Or to help others.
And you don't use it because you're afraid of losing it. Right? Even though at the end, you're not going to have it anyway.
Yeah.
It's not going to do you any good. So it's better to leave what you can leave and use what you can use. The whole purpose of going on this journey is to get to the celestial city. Mm-hmm. And when you get there, you're not going to need anything that you had on your journey. You're just not going to need it. Mm-mm. So why not use everything at your disposal to aid you in getting you there?
That's true. Well, and the funny part is, it's like they're having all this dialogue, and then there towards the end, they kind of circle back around to the three brothers.
Yeah.
And Great Grace.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even remember why they circled around back to him. Mm-hmm. But they did. And so you have this, I picture a guy in armor, like knight style, on his way protecting people and, just taking care of business when it comes to thugs.
Yeah, pretty much. He's constantly
up and down that area, taking care of it.
Yeah, he's literally looking for a fight.
But they make a point of saying that even faint heart, mistrust, and guilt could best Great Grace.
Yeah, he's good. That he would be good so long as he kept them at the point of a sword.
If they got him on his back.
Yeah, it's kind of, and this is true. This is absolutely true. Like in physical combat, like if I keep you at arm's length, if I keep you out of my space, right, at the point of a sword,
Yeah.
I can still fight, but the minute that you come in past where my sword is effective, now I'm in trouble. And that's what he's saying. Like, if they were to get, like, within him, that he would have a hard time against 3 people.
Well, in particular, these names.
Yeah.
Guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Mistrust.
Mm-hmm.
Faint heart.
Yeah.
Can best the greatest grace that fights for you. So I thought that was very interesting. And then hopeful starts kind of saying that I could do this and I could do that kind of thing in relation to this part of the story. And Christian kind of says, don't think you can do better than others when you haven't faced their trials. I mean, he doesn't say that specifically, but basically everybody thinks they could do better than the other person. Yeah. Having not faced what the other person is facing. Mm-hmm. It's not your place to say, I can do better than them. Yeah. But if God goes with us, there's no need to fear. Mm-hmm. There's no need to be afraid. I mean, but that was kind of the close of the dialogue. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I'm like, they didn't talk anymore about what they saw.
No.
It's not resolved.
No, they don't bring it up.
It's not resolved for me.
This man is being carried off.
No, it's not.
No.
Not resolved at all.
But that's not the important part. That's
well, I guess that as soon as I heard those words and having seen what has transpired recently, I was really looking forward to a dialogue on that kind of scenario.
Yeah, about this man being carried off to hell.
For that reason.
Yeah. For
that reason. And in particular because he was said to have been a professor. So he's somebody who's intellectual. He's someone of standing in the community. Mm-hmm. He's someone that's set higher on the social hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And who at the same time was professing to be a Christian. And then for whatever reason, turned tail. Yeah. Changed his mind. Mm-hmm. Okay, I get the point that it's a very vivid picture of a point of what will happen to those kinds of people. But it didn't really discuss it for me.
Yeah, well, I think that I mean, and that may be kind of the point. Like, this is what happened to this guy.
Like, it's just, that's it. That's all you need to know. You don't turn tail. Yeah. Quit turning about on your faith.
If you become an apostate, this is what will happen to you. This is what he is saying. Because
not only have you, at some point, may have been trying to lead people to Christ, now all of those people that you have led to Christ will question their faith. Mm-hmm. And you will also give other people that are questioning their faith the leeway or reasoning to continue questioning it or do the same thing as you. Yeah. So it's worse. It's being judged like false prophet, false teacher style, set apart as you did really bad. Yeah. So they got the shortcut. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, at least I've kind of summed that up for myself. That makes me feel a little better.
Well, this is also the reason that it says where it talks about it's kind of a tag on, but how teachers and false prophets will be judged more harshly. Yeah. Than anyone else.
Well, you're responsible for other people's salvation and souls and their journey.
So if you are a bad person and that is your job, right? Yeah. How many people will you have either kept ignorant or made false teachers themselves?
Yeah, because if they believe it wholeheartedly, they'll spread your ideas far and wide.
And then you come out, you say you come out and you go, oh, I don't believe in God anymore. I was wrong this whole time. So all of those people that you spoke to
are now in a state of crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say that does sum up that little part. I was looking for the dialogue about that.
Yeah, I know.
That's not where it went. They just went way off into left field, and I'm just kind of waiting for a punchline kind of deal at the end of all this dialogue, and there was none. The next thing we know is that they come up where there's two ways, and they're both straight. both sides of the road, both ways to take are straight. So what do we do? Well, they're standing there. Now that all that dialogue's over. And they discuss it, and they're like, maybe this way, maybe that way. And then this he's a dark figure, but he's in these white, shining, beautiful robes.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. And he asks them where they're going and what they're doing, speaks very nicely and sweetly to them.
Oh, yes.
And they tell him. And he goes, well, I'm going that way. So why don't you just follow me? And of course they do. Of course they do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you learned nothing?
Nothing at all.
At that point. So he immediately, whether or not it's immediately or not, it was pretty quick in the book.
Yeah, he leads them down this path, and soon they have turned so far around that they're not even facing in the right direction.
Yeah, you can't see the glow from the city,
and then all of a sudden, whoosh, they're trapped in a net.
Yeah. He ditches the robe at that point, and reveals himself to be the flatterer.
Yep.
Now, I want to pause here, because first of all, you had all that dialogue that was like going in a circle and didn't make no sense, and then there was none for this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? There's nothing to discuss about the flatterer? Why are we not discussing the flatterer? Because to me, it's one of the most prevalent dangers.
Yes.
So there was no... There was nothing. Just a little bit of chit-chat, and then you're up in a net. And this is who I am now, and bye. Like...
Yeah.
I don't know. This section has frustrated me.
I think it's assumed that when someone is being flattering to you, it's obvious.
But he didn't even really say anything in the book that was terribly flattering.
No.
Or what we consider flattering.
Yeah, it just talks about him speaking very, very eloquently and sounding very knowledgeable. They talk about dialogue.
Yeah, but they don't...
It's not actually, the dialogue's not actually there.
Yeah.
And
what do we do with that?
Well, there's a quote.
A man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wrote that down.
Yeah, anyone who tries to flatter you, they're literally just trying to use you for something.
Yeah, they're out for their
That's
own
all they're
gain.
doing. They're out for their own gain. And eventually they will pull you into this trap, and you'll be on your own because they will have gotten what they wanted.
Well, or at least for me, when I hear the word flatter or flatterer, I think of someone that only says niceties, but that's not necessarily the case. You're not talking just someone going, oh, your dress is so beautiful, your hair looks so pretty. It's not just those kinds of things, because con men are flatterers. And they're not just telling you how pretty you are. Mm-mm. Flatterers are telling you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And I guess that he did. He told them what they wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
That he knew the way. Just follow me.
Mm-hmm.
So he conned them.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. I expected... There's been so many places in this little section where I expected dialogue and didn't get any. And then other places, I got all this dialogue that I couldn't make heads or tail of. Mm-hmm. So I was very frustrated with this one. But maybe I shouldn't have done it so late at night. But, I mean, do you think there's any more we really need to discuss about flatterers?
No, I feel like it's something that's pretty
relatively self-explanatory.
Yeah, if someone is just telling you what you want to hear, it's fairly easy to catch on to it, and you just need to brush that person off and make them go away.
As you're saying that, it made me realize of some people that I've listened to lately doing. Mm-hmm. We did a thought experiment of 3 different pastors from 3 different areas. Mm-hmm. And one of them was a flatterer. One of them was doing nothing but standing up there and telling everybody in the congregation what they wanted to hear.
Yep. Exactly what they wanted.
And he was very slick. He was very, very hard to pick up on. If you didn't know, if you weren't critically listening, mm-hmm. and actively listening to what he was saying, oh my goodness, you would have been sucked in.
Yeah, that's why it's so important that you read your Bible and be educated in your faith.
Yes, because you're supposed to be able to question people that are teaching and preaching.
Yeah, I do not claim at all to be the most educated.
No.
As far as biblical study.
No, neither of us are. No. But we're trying. And that's all we can do.
The little bit, the little that we do know and that we have discussed and all of that is enough that we pick up on it?
Yeah.
I mean, legitimately.
Yeah.
It's enough that we picked up on it. And it doesn't take a scholar. It just takes someone who knows what they're talking about.
I know.
It takes someone who's read their Bible.
Yeah.
To pick up on it. And the issue is that each and every one of those people is just as guilty as he is.
Because they didn't do the work.
Exactly.
To further their own faith.
They are allowing him to tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah. That's not good for their souls.
No. It isn't.
And the next stage of their journey. And just in case you're wondering, 1 out of the 3 was a good pastor and was not seeking anything. The other one, he was probably an ignorant, to be honest, at best. He definitely wasn't a flatterer, because we couldn't even listen to him. Like, we had to turn it off.
Like, he reads the verse and then didn't even talk about it.
Nope. Just went off over here and kind of referenced and discussed it a little bit.
Something else
that didn't have anything to do with what the verse did.
And then he circled back.
Yeah.
And continued to not talk about anything. Really.
Yeah, he'd reference it every so often, but it was like a circle. And I don't know, but that was more of, I don't know, an ignorance? Wasn't it an ignorance?
I wouldn't say ignorance. I would certainly say he's not the best public speaker I've ever heard.
No, definitely not. The other one was, but that's because he was a flatterer.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, definitely that was our thought experiment a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
On ourselves.
Mm.
But, yeah. We get bored easily, and we're a bit nerdy with with all of our Bible studies at this point. So we had the idea and ran with it.
I hear things, and I don't want to assume that someone else's opinion of something is correct. Like, I hear someone's opinion of it, and then I want to go investigate it.
Yeah, I've always been a digger of...
To find out, like, what's actually going on there.
Yeah, that's why I've always been so...
That's kind of why I wanted to do that, yeah.
Well, that was kind of why we wanted to start this podcast a bit, was to teach people, like, we're normal people. Mm-hmm. We didn't go to seminary. We didn't go to college for this. This is something that we picked up and started doing for ourselves because we weren't getting it anywhere.
No.
And we tried a lot of places and a lot of ways to try to fill that hole. And we just I don't know. It kind of got to the point where we were like, why don't we share this with other people to help them realize that it doesn't matter what level you're at for high school or middle school or college. Read it for yourself. The book, the Bible, preferably a good version.
Yeah, well, yeah, like a complete version that...
I have some links to some good ones that we would...
doesn't take a lot out of
we
context
would recommend in the description,
like,
actually.
as an adult, you don't want to read a children's Bible.
Yeah, when there's some others that you wouldn't want to either. Yeah, a lot of things are. A lot of things are. You have to be even... I'm learning that because I have several children's Bibles, and I've read through different ones with ours.
Yeah. And
my favorite one to read is the one I'm reading right now, and it's the one you used to see in all the doctor's offices and dentist's office, the tan one.
Yeah.
That from the 1970s, 80s. It's the most accurate and most complete. I'm not saying that they don't skip over some stuff that might not be the most kid-friendly verbiage, but for the most part, it's complete. It's not just one line with a picture.
Yeah.
So that's currently my favorite children's Bible. But you don't think about having to be critical of a children's Bible. And you do. But you wouldn't know to be critical of a children's Bible if you didn't know it yourself.
Yeah.
So.
This is true. So it boggles my mind that we spent so much time going to educated people with degrees and from seminary and MBAs and all of these things. And don't take this the wrong way. There are a lot of well-educated, very good pastors, very good teachers. We saw none of them. Yeah.
And if y'all couldn't tell by now, just by the way we talk, we live in the Bible Belt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we sampled more than a few.
I'm not saying that they were bad people.
No.
What I am saying is that the fact that they had to go to a college and their education was skewed.
More towards doctrine or what? Like
either more towards doctrine or towards
a particular viewpoint.
A more convenient, secular bend.
Oh.
Or so that it was pleasing to as many people as possible.
Butts and seats.
Yeah, butts and seats.
Money and coffers.
Yeah.
None
of it helped us. Constantly seeking some other person's guidance.
When we should have been seeking the only person's or being's guidance.
Yeah, when we should have just been reading the Word.
Now, I'm not saying that Christian community, isn't beneficial or church.
Oh, most certainly.
But that's why, and we found that. And that's why we created our own group of people who were also seeking.
Yeah.
But had enough. I mean, we have some that go to church. We have some that absolutely will not go to church.
Yeah.
wide range of ages here, and they're our accountability group. So they help keep us on the straight and narrow as well. And we try to help them. And it comes from a place of love, because correction comes from a place of love. Or it should. Not just willy-nilly finger wagging.
Yeah.
That you get a lot of times when you get it at churches. That's where the judgmental stereotype comes from. It's because people don't know you enough, and then they determine that your life is...
Finger wag.
Yeah. You didn't take the time to know me, but now you're taking the time to judge me and condemn me.
Yeah. When the idea is, you're, like you said, you're supposed to... The idea is to hold each other accountable.
And you have to be small enough group to do that.
To do that,
yeah.
And you're not just supposed to do it with the people in your group.
No.
Anyone you know who is also a Christian, you are supposed to hold accountable.
Yeah.
Nefarious, whether it's at work and you see someone who has questionable business practices, or whether you're at school with someone who decides to cheat on a test, or whether you're whatever it is you're doing. If someone is like, well, I'm a Christian, okay,
your actions,
then I'm going to hold you accountable to the moral law and authority that you claim to subscribe to.
Well, the other thing is that how you act, your life is your witness.
Exactly.
You're not... You going out on a street corner and shouting Bible verses from the top of your lungs may technically be a form of witnessing, but just from our reading, it's made very clear that you are to set yourself apart from the world. Yeah. And your life and the way you live your life is supposed to be so different that people ask you
why you're that way.
Yeah. And that's, we're circling back to 1 Peter again.
You should also constantly be prepared.
Be able and ready.
Yeah.
Always. To explain the hope that you have.
Yeah.
Which got all of this started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we couldn't find people that were ready and able to explain the hope that they have. I don't know that I'm very good at explaining it, but I feel more equipped now than I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I don't always want to be held accountable. It's not always nice when somebody points something out that you're doing or you've been doing for however many years, and all of a sudden they recognize that that's not good for you.
Yeah.
That's not fun, but I'm going to respect it from somebody that's holding me accountable that I know personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus somebody who's just finger wagging at me. So, but I do think it's important that everybody, whether you go to church or you don't, you're all reading, you're all learning it from the Word of God, because there's a lot in there you're not going to agree with. And if you don't agree with it, then keep reading it over and over again. Ask and pray for guidance and to figure out where whatever it is that's amiss is and how to fix it in your life or in your understanding, whatever it may be. Because depending on the denomination you go to, the verse you may be talking about, you may get an answer in one direction. You go to another denomination, you may get an answer in another direction.
Yeah.
Just based off of doctrine and the denomination's views.
Yeah. So
you can't argue with God.
No.
And the Word of God. It's not your personal truth. It's not your personal interpretation. He wrote it, inspired it, had people write it down the way it's written for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And the idea is that through study and scholarship, being educated in the Word, educating yourself in the Word, is that when you are called to defend the faith that you had, the hope that you have,
you can.
If the other person wants to argue with you, they're not arguing with you. like if I'm talking about what Paul spoke about in Corinthians, and someone disagrees with me, they don't disagree with me. They're disagreeing with Paul.
My first question always is, whenever I have that kind of thing come up, was, did you read the entire thing? In context. Where did you come to, or how did you come to this conclusion?
Yeah.
And if you tell me that somebody else preached on it, or somebody else told you this, or you read it in a devotional that was just the one verse, I don't even know that I'm going to argue with you. Because you haven't put in the work for me to argue with you.
Yeah. Well,
I think I would leave you with, you don't have the context. Come back and discuss it with me when you've read the entire thing.
Yeah, read it and then
just
we'll talk
the book,
about it.
just the letter, just the book, whatever. You are not prepared for this discussion. And all I'm going to say is make you mad.
Yeah. Well, a lot of what's in there will make a lot of people mad.
Yes. But a lot of the times when when you have that kind of situation happening, they're not going to believe you. They'll say it's your interpretation or you're taking it out of context. No. I want you to go and read it. I want you to take notes. I want you to come back for this debate.
Yeah.
I don't want to pull out knowledge that I claim to have and just make you mad and make you resentful or less likely to open the book and read it for yourself. I want you to read it for yourself.
Yeah.
I don't want to debate you in your ignorance. It won't help them.
Well, the idea is for an ignorant person to be educated.
Yes.
Either through cause of like debate.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Christian and Hopeful are doing with ignorance and hoping that he'll mull it over.
Yeah.
While they, we'll talk to him and then,
see, that's the best you could hope for in that situation.
Let's let him mull it over for a little bit and maybe he'll come
around.
Maybe he'll come around and then we'll speak to him later on, which they do.
But he has no proof. He's done no seeking or searching himself with what they've talked about. That's kind of where I'm coming from, because a lot of people, when you say debate, because I'm not going to say argue, because once it gets to an argument, nobody wins.
Yeah.
Most people look at a debate as somebody wins. I'm not looking to win.
Yeah.
And the only way that I can help you in your journey is if you're willing to educate yourself. You're more than willing to argue your point. Why are you not willing to prepare for the debate?
Yeah.
Like, I'm giving you fair warning. I'm giving you an out.
Yeah.
I'm giving you an out. I by no means know everything front to back, chapter for verse. I don't. But just in talking with people since we've started this, I try to not just lay it all out there on the table, because inevitably when they're coming from that kind of stance in their ignorance, it ends up in an argument because they don't have all of the information.
Yeah, they get frustrated.
And that's not helpful.
Yeah.
So I try to be careful with how I word things and what I say. A lot of the times I'm saying, have you read that in a while? Or something along those lines, to try to get them to go back, read it if they ever have, read it for the first time, read it again. Yeah. Because I don't want to win. I want you to spend time with God. I'm not winning here.
Yeah.
You're losing.
Exactly.
Your soul is losing. When you choose to not spend time in the Word. And then on top of it, if you're doing that kind of debate with people, if you're wrong, you're spreading false information about what you claim to believe. Yeah. So it's very important to know what you're talking about before you open your mouth. And to be careful what you say and when you say it and how you say it. Yeah. So, did we go off too far into the weeds?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit? Okay. So, at this point, they are stuck in a net, right?
Yes, they're stuck in a net.
We're back to flatterers. The flatterer. Let's get all the way back around to them being stuck in a net. Mm-hmm. All right. And they cry out. Mm-hmm. As Christian has done so many times.
Yes.
Cries out for help, cries out to God.
Mm-hmm.
And then a shining one appears.
Mm-hmm.
Has a whip of small cords, right? Small cords?
Yeah.
Because, I'm like, why are you emphasizing that they're small? And you will find out why they're emphasizing that they're small later. Mm-hmm. Small means more.
Yeah.
The shining one comes up, looks at them, frees them, mm-hmm. helps them. Came when they called, when they cried out. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to point out that basically the flatterer dressed like an apostle. He's a false apostle. Mm-hmm. False teacher.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had a footnote about that, and that went along with our trail down the rabbit hole. But he looked like what you would expect a pastor or apostle or or a teacher to look like. So it was very easy for them to follow him.
Yeah.
But anyway, the shining one frees them, and he leads them back to the path, and then he starts questioning them. Mm-hmm. Like, what did the shepherds tell you?
Well, wait, hang on.
Oh,
don't leave out the fact that he chastises them.
That was after.
Is this after?
Yeah, he has to have the information before he can do that.
Yeah.
So he's asking them, what did the shepherds tell you? Did the shepherds tell you to beware of the flatterer? Yes, they did. Mm. So why did you follow him? Did they not tell you? Did he not give you a map? Yes, they did, but we didn't even remember it. Went through all of these questions. And he goes, you're free, but because of how you are, you will be punished for turning out of the way, for not listening and not following the path. So they're whipped with the whip of many, many tiny cords. And at the same time, he's saying, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Mm-hmm. Be zealous and repent.
Yeah.
And they do. And they thank him for it.
Mm-hmm.
And they thank him for freeing them. And then they went on their way. But that particular point is something that I don't think is taught hardly at all anymore. And it goes back to the accountability for us. Because I look at that as a parent, and I'm like, because I love you, I want you to grow up and be successful. I want you to grow up and be able to be on your own, be a good influence in the world, be a good person. I'm not going to let you run amok and get away with everything.
Yeah.
You're going to get in trouble. I don't like that you get in trouble, but you're going to get in trouble until you learn these lessons that I'm trying to teach you. So I see that from a parent's perspective.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I see it from an accountability group perspective. If I care about you on any level, I should care about your soul most of all. Because I'd like to see you again. And if I'd like to see you again, then I shouldn't have any problem pointing out things that could be a problem for you getting there. And so often it is, because it's not easy, or we don't really want to bring that up with them. It might be a sensitive subject, or even, do I have the right to bring it up? So for me, I had those questions as far as people went. Everybody has. You don't want to get involved. It's not your problem. It's not your business. It's their business. It's their life. put into perspective of what could end up being their eternal life,
Mm-hmm.
turns it on its head a little bit.
Yeah.
So, do I care enough to tell them if they're doing something and going out of the way, so that hopefully they don't end up in the place that I wouldn't want anyone to end up?
Mm-hmm.
And these are people I care about. I wouldn't want anybody to end up there, much less people I care about. So why would I sit on my hands and not tell them the truth? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
probably you have a good chance of making them mad from time to time.
Yeah.
But if you love them and they love you, you should be able to talk to them, and maybe they need a cooling off period. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you should be able to talk to them in a couple of days if they do and go, you know, I only said that because I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they'll be receptive, and they won't every time.
Yeah.
Nobody will. Sometimes you may see the thing that is their biggest vice.
Yeah.
If it is, they're going to fight you tooth and nail.
Mm-hmm.
But at least you tried.
Yeah.
And you keep trying. I mean, there comes a point when you can't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you can read about that in the Bible.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to love our neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And right here it tells us that as many as I love, I rebuke them and chasten them. So if you love your neighbor, that doesn't mean that you're just nice to them. That doesn't mean that you just tell them the nice things they want to hear.
Yeah.
And you don't tell them the bad and what you're seeing that could be a problem for their lives. And we're not told that anymore. Mm-hmm. We're so consumed with not hurting feelings that, well, I'm glad you didn't hurt their feelings in this life. I hope you won't miss them very much in the next.
Yeah, exactly. What are hurt feelings?
In the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
They're nothing.
I feel like I think that a lot of the time also is some of this idea of, well, what if I'm wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Like you recognize something and that you need to talk to someone about, but then you're like, well, what if it's just me?
Or don't have the whole picture.
What if I don't have the whole picture? What if I'm wrong about this and it's actually something else? Okay, talk to them about it.
Mm-hmm.
If it turns out that you're wrong, then
own it.
Own it. And now you have grown from it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It takes a lot of learning to be able to discern things in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
And and to try to help other people. It takes a lot of work on yourself. It's not easy, but a lot of the times when you see something in somebody else, it's either because you know maybe their history, or you went through it yourself, mm-hmm. or you know somebody who did, things like that. Those kinds of things are easier to pick up on without as much learning and reflection. But to me, the easiest way to figure it out, especially if you're on the fence about it, mm-hmm. is to pray about it. Pray about it and read. Mm-hmm. And you'll find the answer. Either it'll grow and you'll be more and more convicted about the fact that you haven't been talking to them. Mm-hmm. Or you'll figure out that maybe you're wrong, or maybe you'll grow from something you read, or maybe something will blatantly be put into your life. It's just a giant billboard that flashes at you to mm-hmm. tell you that you're wrong. Yeah. Or to give you a resource that helps you understand why you're wrong. Mm-hmm. It's all growing. Mm-hmm. We're all ultimately children. So it's constant growth. Or we have to at least work towards constant growth.
Yeah.
And who wants to do it alone? Yeah. I mean, what will he say to you if you did so well on your journey and learning? Mm-hmm. When you get to the celestial city, and you didn't even attempt to bring anyone else with you.
Mm-hmm.
So you learned what was right, and you lived an honest and good life.
Mm-hmm.
Did your best to not sin, repented when you did, lived a good Christian life. And you have no jewels in your crown.
Yeah.
Because you didn't make the effort for anyone else. Not everybody's going to take the bait.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sad. But you should at least try to help them get on the path.
For sure, yeah.
And I don't know about you, but since we've started this book, different people that I know that have something to do with the church capacity, different churches that I know, if we're in conversation or whatever, and I'll ask, have you read Pilgrims Progress?
Mm-hmm.
Most of them haven't even heard of it.
No.
And that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Especially when it's somebody that I know that went to either a Christian college or went to or who may have went to seminary. Maybe they don't do the preaching part or whatever, but they went to school for it or whatever. And I'm like, why is that not required reading? Because I had to read a version of it when I was a kid. When I was in Christian school, I read a version of it when I was little. So I was familiar with parts of it, but it's still the kid version.
Well, I think that is part of the problem. And this is just my opinion, but I think that's part of the problem. So the book was modernized. Mm-hmm. It was not translated, but it was updated to modern English. Mm-hmm. And then it lost a lot of its dialogue, and then became shortened further and further and further, to where it hits major plot points, and that's it. And it reads more as a children's story, or is thought of more as a children's story, than it is a legitimate
helpful
literary work. Yeah, that is truly helpful.
Yeah.
To everyone. It doesn't matter who's reading it.
Or what age.
Yeah.
I gotta say, though, if this is boiled down into a children's story, it's one of the most scary, whacked out ones I would have ever read.
So you get this, I get this feeling that whomever has tried to bury this book, the most popular Christian book ever written, did a very good job of it in a very short amount of time.
That's true.
And I don't mean like a flesh and blood conspiracy person.
No, there is still principalities, so Paul says, that fight against the good in the world, the good of God in the world. Yep. And this book helped a lot of people for a long time.
It was extremely, extremely popular. In a time where you couldn't just look it up on didn't just have instant access to whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
Whatever you wanted to read. So someone goes, "Hey, have you read such and such book?" "No, I haven't." "Oh, you should look it up." Okay, and then go and immediately download it to your phone.
Yeah, well, that to me,
this is a time when like the printing press was still new tech.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, so
they had book burnings.
Yeah. You bought the book, and there were very few, probably not a lot of copies of this book, in your village, so it probably got shared around a lot.
The printing press was around.
Oh, I know it was. But you're still not at a point where you're printing books by the millions. Right? It still takes time for for you
to print it.
to
Nowhere
print
near
it.
what now. Yeah,
and
I get your point.
Be able to get your hands on it.
Yeah, I get your point. You have to have it made. You have to bind it. You have to distribute it, and then you have to pay for it. I get it.
Yeah, this is all being hand done.
Yeah, it takes a lot longer to get it into people's hands. So, but I don't know. When I read that last part, and I think we'll leave them here before they're back at the path. Mm-hmm. But that last part of, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Mm-hmm. It's a one-liner that's important nowadays more than it's ever been to me. Because we lost that. We got too caught up in making people feel good. Mm-hmm.
We do.
So, doesn't help them in the long run, though, sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good place to leave them for tonight, don't you?
Yeah.
So, that being said, if you want to check out our links in the description, we've tried to put good links to good versions of the book, be it print, Kindle, audio, even kids' versions. We've tried to source and find the best ones that we would recommend. And sometimes somebody that could get a lot out of it, but they won't read all of it. They won't read Old English. They won't listen to 10 hours. So, I mean, we do have some that are shorter that are like the 3-hour modern English version. Yeah. It's definitely a good jumping off point to help people. And there's still a lot in there that can help a person. You just don't get the full effect of it. We also have some different versions of the Bible listed below that we would recommend if you're looking for a good Bible. But we do have affiliate links in the description, and they're Amazon affiliates, which means if you want to support the show, you can click on any of those links, and you don't have to buy anything that the link is to. But if you do your Amazon shopping through that link, Amazon will pay us a commission, and it'll help support the show. So it's a great little way to support causes like that. And if you didn't know, there is an animated version of Pilgrims Progress that has come out. I can't say a lot. I've seen a few churches, and it has encouraged me, are screening the movie. But they're currently translating it into 20 languages to distribute it. So churches can actually apply and host the movie for free. They were just asking that if each church that did would collect a love offering. Because all that money, every bit of it, goes to translating it and distributing it worldwide right now. There is a link to it in the description, actually, because you can buy the movie itself on Amazon now. And it's very well done. I wouldn't necessarily recommend your kid watch it if they were under 8, probably, because there are some scary parts with the animation. Or you watch it for yourself first and see if you think your child can handle it.
Yeah, well, I would say screen everything.
Well, I watch too many cartoons now at this point for having to screen everything. But it's definitely a good thing that if you are in a church, you may want to approach somebody about doing for a movie night. They do take some liberties with it, I'm not going to lie. Yeah. But nothing that really takes away from the story and the main journey of Christian. So it's definitely a really, really good introduction. And to this day, there's still a lot of people who watch the movie and then get into a book. Lord of the Rings being a great example. So it may be a good way to introduce people to the book. So feel free to check that out. I don't know if I have a link to their website in the description. I'll have to see. But there is a link to the actual movie on Amazon where you can buy it in disc or digital, which is great. I tried to find it on Vudu, and Vudu doesn't offer it. Amazon was the only one that offered it. You can buy the disc a couple places, but Amazon had the digital, and I'm all about digital. I can't keep up with stuff. So feel free to check that stuff out. We also have Facebook and Instagram if you guys want to follow along with us as we go through our journey of learning. Mm-hmm. Right now we're doing visual quotes from John Bunyan on our Instagram account. So please check that out, and that's a good way to communicate with us and get in touch with us. Mm-hmm. And we would love to hear from you guys. So I guess that's it. You good?
I'm good.
So I think we're going to change our catchphrase at the end.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be a little more specific.
All right.
So keep wandering through the word, Pilgrims. Until next time.